Hey everyone, today on Mostly Carrera Slots, I'm going to take this 27276 Renault show car. It's a 2007 livery Formula One car, and we're going to convert it from the Evolution version using a 26740 F1 decoder and make it a digital 132 version. So here we go. I'm going to kind of walk you through it as best I can. Once you remove the body, you'll see the reverse switch circuit board. The 26740 will replace the reverse switch board, giving it a digital capability. There are some differences between the two boards where the wires connect, so you might want to draw a diagram or mark the new decoder inputs. However, it's not all that critical. If you get them backwards, you can use polarity switch to correct it later on. The next step is to release the circuit board from the chassis. To do this, use a small flat tip to release the small black tab near the motor. Once it's released, the board will lift up some. Continue lifting the board up and out of the recessed area. Next, use the screwdriver to dislodge the motor from its cradle on the brush end of the motor. Lift the motor up enough to access both solder terminals on each side. This will help facilitate the desoldering of the wires. With the board placed firmly in a stand, desolder the input positive and negative wires from the switch circuit board. Now, support the chassis. Then remove the gray and purple wires. Try not to apply heat too long. Excess heat could transfer to the plastic, damaging the motor. Set the chassis aside, then mount the 26740 decoder into your fixture, taking care where you place your clamps. Once you have it secure, and with the decoder terminals previously marked, desolder the positive and negative input voltage wires, again being careful not to apply too much heat too long. Do not remove the gray and purple wires, leave them soldered to the decoder. Place the chassis behind the decoder, facing you, with the front wheels up at the top. Pull the red and black wires up and begin the solder process of the input voltage wires to the correct terminals of the 26740, previously marked positive and negative, again not applying too much heat. You may have to add a bit of new solder to soften up the old solder in order to attach the wires. Now it's time to attach the motor circuit wires to the motor. Look for a red dot or other mark to indicate where to place the purple wire. Sometimes they aren't marked. If not, I use a Sharpie to dot the purple wire terminal before I desolder it. I prefer mounting the chassis in a fixture rather than on a tabletop for this process. Unlike the input wires, it's critical to ensure the motor leads are soldered in the proper polarity. The switch on the decoder only switches the input polarity, so if you miswire the motor, it will cause the car to go in reverse no matter where the polarity switch is placed. Be mindful of using too much solder on the motor. The tolerance to the decoder on the 2007 livery is tight. Too much solder could cause issues with the decoder chip fitment, causing damage if you try to force it into position. The later 2010 and up F1s have much more room between the motor and the 26740 decoder. Add solder to loosen the old solder if you have to. And again, too much heat can cause damage to the motor. Now install the new decoder, but be mindful of the wires that could get pinched. You'll have to remove the IR emitter plug. Just pop it out and set it aside. You won't need it once the decoder is installed. Set the decoder under the motor connections first, then work it into the IR and polarity switch opening. Use the screwdriver to push the front retainer forward enough to pop the decoder in fully. Locate the wires out of the way, and you're ready to test the chip installation. Now, power up your track. The first test I do is the IR emitter test to check that the decoder is getting power. The car doesn't have to be coded to the controller for this test. Just place the chassis on the track near the lap counter IR receiver and push the car across the receiver. Don't freak out if it doesn't work the first time. You may have to switch to polarity. Do that and then try again. You should see the car's position number illuminate first, then do it again, and you should get a lap count. Next test is to code the car to the controller and verify the car actually moves in the right direction. Do this like you normally would. You'll know as soon as you code it, as the car should grunt and lurch forward slightly. If it lurches backward, you need to verify the wires to the motor are correct. Take it for a lap and switch lanes to make sure it's good to go. Although this car sounds like it's dragging on the track, that's just the really bad front tires. I replaced them and it sounds much better. Before the final assembly, take a look at the ring and pinion gears. Make sure the pinion gear didn't slide towards the ring gear. This one did, so I had to make a quick adjustment. Also, while you have the opportunity, pull the axles out and remove any carpet fibers or hair that may be wrapped around them. I cleaned mine, then lubed the axle bushings with silicone grease. I put a little grease on the ring gear before installing the axle. It's best not to use oil on F1 cars. The oil can get on the motor shaft and cause the pinion to start slipping. I remove, clean, and lube the front axle, then reassemble the car. Lastly, I verify that all the body pieces are tight. If they aren't, I will either super glue them or use a solder tip to melt them back tight. Make sure that the wires are out of the way of the chassis anchor points or placed in an area that doesn't interfere with the body as it's set in place. All that's left is to put a couple screws in the body, change the front tires, and clean the rears, and it'll be ready for a test drive.